Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, here's a headline for you that you haven't read yet. A third Democrat eyes the third congressional seat. There's another Democrat in our area who's looking to take on U.S. Representative Rosa DeLauro, who has been serving as our member of Congress since 1990's election. That's 30 years ago. No, 35.
Oh, God, math this early in the morning?
1935, yeah.
Yep.
And Andrew Rice, who lives in the district, are you formally running? You exploring a run? What's the deal?
I'm a declared candidate for Congress as of October 1st.
Okay, so you filed with the FCC.
I filed the paperwork, doing all of that congressional stuff, trying to get my name out there. So thank you so much for having me on today. This is
good.
This is exciting. I guess this is my first interview, like formal sit-down interview of the campaign. As I was telling you a few minutes ago, this is my first time on radio since my friend had me on his, Yukon station at the Student Union. So this is really exciting for me.
What we're going to do is we're going to turn off all the lights and have one spotlight come down really hard on you.
Bring it.
Ask you a lot of things I promised I wouldn't ask. And then once you get to Washington, piece of cake.
That's what I've heard. That the most challenging part is going to be getting on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. But you are running for the Democratic nomination.
I am running as a Democrat for the
nomination.
nomination.
There's a guy, Damian DeNoble, who also is an attorney. He's doing that as well.
I've met him. He is a very nice gentleman, very intelligent, and I'm really happy that he's in this race with me as well.
So, Andrew, who are you and why are you running for Congress?
So my name is Andrew Rice. I've lived in Milford for the past 15 years. I rent a home with my college friend and my dog, Yoshi. He's my senior policy advisor. Sorry, I'm terrible with the puns. So up until October 3rd, I was working as a assistant scientific project manager for a small sequencing biotech company, and just seeing everything that's happening in this nation, seeing fascism rise, seeing our immigrant community members being snatched off the streets, seeing our trans community lose their rights, seeing the genocide that's occurring in Palestine. I started getting a lot more active in the political sphere, trying to do more community work, trying to do more volunteer work, and I confronted Rosa DeLauro about one of her votes for sending military aid over to Israel, and that confrontation got on to Instagram, and then someone from the Hamden DTC approached me about the idea of running.
I think I know who that was, Dan.
Yes, it was. Yes, that was Dan Garrett. And I never really necessarily thought of myself as someone that would run for Congress one day. But when he presented the opportunity to me, and I looked more into her background and started to understand more of who Rosa was, I decided that maybe I could do this. The opportunity presented itself, and so that little backstory. I got into science because I really wanted to help people. And
were you was your degree in science?
Yeah, so I went to Yukon for my bachelor's degree, and I got my degree in molecular and cellular biology. And then I think it was like 2013, I went to University of New Haven to get my master's in cellular and molecular biology, so the two universities switched to the...
So is it accurate to call you a molecular cell biologist?
Yes, you could call me a molecular biologist.
Okay.
And so I did a lot of work. I worked for Yale for 12 years, and then I worked remotely for a company in New York. And the unfortunate reality with the system that we live in is that all of the work I was doing for science, it wasn't going to the benefit of all people. A lot of it wound up benefiting corporations and big pharma. And even if I was a technician, a lab manager, and the project manager, so there's much smarter people doing the actual research, and I was just helping coordinate it because I need to know my own limits. But I started realizing that even the research that we were doing, if it did end up with a cure or a treatment or something, it would only ever go to the people that have health care. And a lot of people in this country don't have health care, and so
the number's about to go up.
And the number's about to go up. Very unfortunate. That's one of my sticking points with our current representative, Rosa DeLauro. I'm vehemently for universal health care. I think everyone in this nation should have guaranteed coverage, It should be a government-run system, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it.
Single payer.
Single payer. Rosa DeLauro has not been on board with that. I find that very unfortunate. It's like, the whole shutdown was about the ACA subsidies, and we wouldn't have had to have that issue if we had just had universal health care.
No sensing out of all of it, and just to put the cards on the table, I'm a Bernie guy, so for single payer. I think Trump was right about something in that shutdown, which was that greedy corporations made too much out of Obamacare, and Obamacare's fatal flaw was that it dealt in private insurers. To be fair to Obama, he felt that's all he could get passed was a Republican Romney Care version that was not single payer because he was abandoned by members of his party for single payer. And he did feel he made that compromise so that tens of millions of people would get health care, which they did. Mm-hmm. But that the system relies on a private insurance industry whose business model is to get as much money from people to give them back as little health care as possible. So I think, to be fair to Rosa DeLauro, she was sort of in an Obama position in that she felt the way she was going to get the people the most health care was to get what could pass and get tens of millions of more people on. Since then, people who advocate single payer, like Justin Piglino, who ran against them as a Green Party, made that a central issue and said, we have to look more radically at the roots of our government. And that's an ongoing debate that always takes place between people who think the system needs fundamental reform and others who say, I'm guided by those principles, but I'm trying to deliver for people what I can get. And it's an interesting tension, and I think it's different at every level of government. About some people say, especially DSA people and the predecessor of DSA, Democratic America was there were two groups, the New American Movement and Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, DSOC. Remember, we had these debates, and their argument always was that by the time you get the president or congressperson, you're not going to change the roots of the system there. It really is someone who's going to come in like Reagan or Trump or Bush, who's going to deny tens of millions of people care, versus ones like liberal Democrats who don't do that radical reform, get money from corporate interests, but end up passing liberal positions that benefit more people. Whereas at the grassroots, when you run for council person, alder, mayor, town committees, that's where you start getting the more radical change, versus other people who say, like Zohran Mamdani, that you in fact can step into those bigger roles, that it's more possible than you think, and that people my age or people who've been watching politics for a longer time don't realize that you don't have to wait 50 years to legalize gay marriage. You don't have, the change can come. Mm-hmm. So where do you stand in that continuum? You're 37 years old. You're kind of a middle of those ages.
So that is an interesting point. And of course, you have to operate within the confines of, having a majority in Congress, having the 60 votes in the Senate. But I feel like at the end of the day that, yes, you should always try and manage to bring something back to the constituents. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you have to give up that argument, give up that fight. Every election cycle, Democrats should be out there fighting for the ideals of, FDR, of ensuring that people have economic stability, and a major part of that is healthcare. And so, we did pass Obamacare, but I was watching, there was an interview on Apple TV with Jon Stewart and Rosa DeLauro, and he was talking about how, something about like 600 lobbyists in the halls of Congress with legislation. And she just kind of like laughed that off. And I'm like, why are we allowing so many lobbyists in the hall of Congress while we're having important policy debate? Because the lobbyists, they are lobbying for corporate interests. There's no lobby for the working class. There's no lobby for poor people.
The one time I covered someone Congress, Code Pink was in there in the room.
Code Pink?
Yeah, they were in the room.
Oh, were they?
Congressional hearing I covered, yeah, but then they got escorted out because they were yelling and throwing things. Yeah.
Well, so my background's been in science, and so in the Constitution, the founders even wrote that scientific ideals should guide policy, and so I want to have scientists and experts in the field help guiding policy and not lobbyists. And when you accept corporate money, like Rosa DeLauro and many of the establishment Democrats, I start having some trust issues as to whether or not they are truly committed to fighting for working class people and working class values, because at the end of the day, the status quo has kept people like her in power, has kept her wealthy. She won't sign on to the the Restore Trust in Congress Act, which would ban insider trading. You see that
that's interesting, because that's not where she makes her money. It's her husband who makes the money. He's a pollster.
So her husband makes the money, but there's nothing preventing her from giving information to him. So I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff.
that one.
I'm very
I think
skeptical.
I'm wondering if it's alliances. Anyways, good points. One of our listeners, Harry, is also here. He wrote something interesting here about. He says that Obamacare, he's a Trump guy. They made it look more robust by adding people to the rolls of Medicaid, and now they just want to pay for those extra people who were supposed to be temporary. And if you can't afford Obamacare, how are you going to pay for universal health care? A couple of things to unpack there. One of which, would you argue that that's a place where left and right might meet, who say that by letting insurance companies in, you were building a system that ultimately was not going to work, so that you have to kind of add people in when you had the opportunity for the Medicaid expansion, and just like with the tax breaks that were supposed to be temporary, that the right wingers are keeping permanent, you keep it going in a broken system.
So I have a big issue with the profit-driven motive, especially when it comes to healthcare. And when you insert profit into the arena, there was only one way to continue making profit. Year after year, insurance companies have to show that they're making more profit, and the only way to do that is to limit insurance or kick people off. And so for something like universal health care, there was a study done in the Lancet that showed that if we implemented something such as Medicare for All, we would actually save the federal government, I think, like $450 billion in healthcare expenditures. And so my question is, for the right, who are very, fiscally conservative, want to ensure efficient government, that we're not overspending, why are we not looking at studies like that showing that if we eliminated private health insurance, we would actually be saving the government and the federal government and taxpayers $450 billion while ensuring that every single American has health care? And, there are other countries in the world, like most developed nations, they all have health care already. And we're America. We are America. In the 1950s and 60s, other countries were reaching for, the sky. We reached the moon. Where is the America that realizes its greatness and fights for it? The last time I checked, we're Americans, not Americans. And I'm tired of people saying that we can't do this. No, we're the greatest nation in the world. We can do whatever we put our mind to.
Pulling the risk to cut the costs and cutting out the profits that go to the insurance companies who benefit from saying no to people.
Pardon?
So the idea is you're pulling the risk to save money and cutting out the for-profit middleman who makes money by denying health care to people.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to bring you back to this question of how does one produce change from the outside and the inside? And obviously the question is yes, you do it from both places. You're running in a tradition that goes back to at least Charles Pillsbury, who ran as the Green Party candidate against Rosa a little more than 20 years ago. And he was a big supporter of Rosa DeLauro. But he felt in that day that the Iraq War was the fundamental issue of the day and that she wasn't on the right side of that. And he did not think he was going to win, even though he was a well-known person in town. He hadn't run before. He did like Justin Paglino, like you. He had a very idealistic, motivated campaign. In your case, is about, it sounds like Gaza and healthcare kind of front and center. In the course of that campaign, at a debate, Rosa DeLauro said that Charlie was right, and she switched her position on the Iraq War and opposed it because of the pressure she got from the left rather than the right in a district where she often is challenged in suburbs. He felt, even though he got 6% of the vote, if I'm not mistaken, he had accomplished a victory. Mm-hmm. Is that the victory you're looking for in taking on a 36-year incumbent without having run for office before, to move her to the left on issues like Gaza and healthcare? Or do you think, are you running to try to get the office?
So if you ask any of my friends, they will say that I don't half-ass anything. Am I allowed?
You can say that.
Okay. I'm not allowed to that I don't half-ass anything. I'm in it to win it. That's just my nature. Now, so I like making analogies. So bear with me, this will make sense, hopefully. I do Krav Maga. I train in Krav Maga. And in Krav Maga...
In what?
Krav Maga. It's an Israeli defense, self-defense training course.
How do you spell it?
KravMaga.
MAGA.
Ironically enough,
I never heard of this thing.
You never heard of Krav Maga? Oh, so I there's a great dojo down in Bridgeport. The sensei's name is Juan. He's a fantastic guy. I actually started doing that 6 years ago when Trump was first elected. And then I had to quit because my roommate was going to leave, so I had to save money. And then the pandemic happened, and then I got sick from the pandemic. And I wound up being one of the people with long COVID. You
still got it?
So I still have a condition called peripheral neuropathy. It's just like a nerve pain. But luckily, I'm fortunate enough to have health insurance. Well, now it's Cobra, which is expensive, and I don't understand how people are affording all this stuff. It boggles my mind, and it's very inspirational to see how people are able to survive on so little. And that's another conversation. So I still deal with some of the effects of COVID, but I'm very lucky because, a lot of people died, so I'm happy to be alive.
Okay, so the question I'm asking, you're saying that you're running to win.
Mm-hmm.
Have you run for office before? I
have not run for office before. This is a very, as my policy advisor likes to say, I'm an underdog. I'm an underdog candidate. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you go to, state council and do this and do the traditional, avenue and, get the experience and blah, 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 blah. And my answer to that is, it's like, well, that's what everyone in office currently has done. And the system is not working. So maybe someone who hasn't been in office for all these years and hasn't been, I don't want to say manipulated because that's not the right term, but like molded into something else and gets away from their roots by the time they reach these higher positions, maybe it is better for someone who maybe doesn't have that, same experience, but has ideas and passion and energy and a scientific background. Because, I wonder what would happen if more scientists ran for office and we actually follow the scientific method. We figure out, we find a problem, we come up with a hypothesis, we test different methods, and we come up with, a solution that involves collaboration and not, because, I can't, if I were to make it into office, I obviously cannot do this alone. I can't get into office alone. I need help of the people, and I want the help of the people.
Do you have a campaign? Do you have people working with you?
So it's very small right now. Most people are volunteers right now. I am working on fundraising, which is, I guess, a lot of people say is the worst part of the campaign, and I agree because
it was the best part of the Mamdani campaign because some of these people felt like they wanted to make a difference against corporate interests.
So that what we're hoping for is that we can get thousands of monthly donors who can give $5 a month. That's well, actually I haven't been to Starbucks in a while, so I don't know if that's a cup of coffee.
Obviously, your campaign fits into national debates over age versus experience, new blood, that gerontocracy, all that. So, like Zohran Mamdani being the big example. Now he ran against an easy villain in Andrew Cuomo, even though it wasn't easy to win. And he had already been a state senator, although he hadn't had a lot of offices, and he ran an amazingly inspired campaign. I guess one thing you're running up against here is that some of the people will agree with you that we need to have younger people take over in Congress. You need to have people who look at what's possible, whether it's healthcare or Gaza or other issues, to get the fundamental root rather than what's, expand the idea of possibility. Some of the people who agree with you in general support Rosa DeLauro, like David Hogg, right? He's the guy who nationally is raising money for people who are under 40, I guess, to take on older people, and she's 83. He said the one person he would never support running against was Rosa DeLauro because of how much she delivers for progressives. And Bernie Sanders has written that she is one of the most effective members in Congress. So what kind of challenge does that present to you? How are you going to make the case to people who follow people like that and say she's not the exception, she's not the one who, because of her experience, is able to deliver really a lot of money for progressive causes and push the envelope as far to the left as possible within Congress?
Great questions. And so I do find her, she has done some wonderful things. She did work on the Head Start program, the child tax credit, the earned income tax credit. She's been a champion for women's health.
And she ran the budget committee and negotiated a lot for cities. Yeah.
But there are other things that give me a lot of pause, and a lot of it has to do with her corporate funding. And so, for example, one of the big issues that I'm finding that people really care about are these ICE abductions. Our friends, our family, our immigrant community, people getting snatched up. If Rosa DeLauro really cares about our immigrant communities, why does she take money from AT&T and General Dynamic and L3 Harris? All three have contracts with ICE. All three make profit off of ICE. What incentive does Rosa DeLauro have to protect our immigrant communities from ICE? She talks a lot about climate change. One of the largest polluters of the climate is our military, and she has time and time again voted in favor of these large military budgets, the Iraq War, her support for the genocide in Gaza right now. I think
she's spoken out against it. She doesn't call it a genocide. She disagrees with the Israeli government and what it's doing, but she's spoken out about Israel having the right to exist.
So this is what I've noticed with a lot of these establishment Democrats is they'll say something, but then their votes, I feel like, tell a different story. So if you really, believe the situation is unacceptable and that Israel, has the right to exist, but that they shouldn't be, doing what they're doing, then why did you vote in favor of giving them another $500 million? Why do you keep voting in favor of all these billion-dollar packages going to Israel? Why is it that Israel their citizens get free healthcare and free education, but our own citizens don't get free healthcare, don't get free education? And then she talks about how we should not be giving tax breaks to the rich. Well, one of your corporate funders is SpaceX, which is led by Elon Musk, which is one of the largest, is the biggest oligarch billionaire there is. And so when your rhetoric doesn't match what your corporate donors are and your votes in Congress, and I wanted to sit down. I actually I reached out to Rose's office, I think on 2 occasions, and I spoke to, I think his name is Lou, one of her
Genie.
Yes. And I wanted to sit down with her and understand some of these things, because I understand myself that I don't have all the background knowledge. I don't have all of the what's going on behind the scenes. And before I launched this campaign and basically tax some of her legacy, I wanted to give her an opportunity to sit with me and see, was there common ground? Was there an opportunity for you to mentor a new generation of congresspeople? And she never reached back out to me. And so I am going to question a lot of her policy. And so, she takes money from AT&T and Verizon. That makes no sense to me. She takes money from Deloitte, which they do a lot of tax prep. So the money she receives from these corporations that fund her campaigns, it gives me a lot of pause. And there's a
You're saying there are actual votes that then take place, like military budgets, aid to Israel. What would be some other example stuff she's voted for that you felt compromised the vote because of the donations?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer right off the bat because there's a lot of information that I'm parsing through. Again, because I am new to this, but again, I feel like having a new perspective, someone who is trained in science and having that kind of methodology could be something, could be an asset in Congress. And so there is a lot to learn. I don't remember if I said it on the radio or if it was before, but I did resign from my job on October 3rd so that I could, have that focus on the campaign, learn what I need to learn, get out into the community, volunteer, hear what the people's needs are.
The big thing is, do you have any funny videos?
Well, I think I'm funny, but
other people think they're funny? One thing I'm looking at, Andrew, is so the Mamdani, I was one of the many people across the country who were addicted to his videos before he hit, like around February. It's like, who's this guy who's making the most amazing political videos? They're not only funny, they're incredibly substantive and they're clear. And there was a guy who worked on the Nebraska Senate campaign who helped him do that. And I'm wondering whether that so now everybody running for office and in office, including mayors, everybody's, they're doing videos, is try to communicate in that 3-minute or 2-minute or 1-minute vertical form. And it's interesting. I'm wondering if that works in a smaller context. I'm wondering, like, the other guy, Damian's trying to do these videos. They're not hitting yet. You never know what's going to hit. Mayor races, is it still more of an older touch thing? Like Rose DeLore, everybody knows her in every town committee, right? Everybody, she's, met everyone and been to all their events and everything. And I'm wondering if, unlike in a larger race, I'm just curious. I'm going to, I've been watching everybody's video and see if that really has an impact. Obviously, it has to be backed up by humans. So, like, Mamdani was backed up by probably the most people who ever volunteered in a mayoral campaign ever, at least in the century or whatever. And, over 110,000 people volunteered for that campaign. So it was matching the two. So I'm just very interested in how campaigns are evolving.
So I am trying to do more like, TikTok videos and Instagram, Facebook. And it is weird what does hit and what doesn't. So, there are a couple of videos. So on October 18th, I gave a speech at the No Kings rally, and I thought it was up in Hartford. It's pinned on my Instagram and TikTok, but that had 20, 25 views, and I was like, oh, I thought that was a great video. Then I went on like a random rant about the 50-year mortgage plan, and that somehow got 7,000 views on TikTok, and I'm like,
That's interesting. What's your take on the 50-year mortgage?
I think it's a complete giveaway to the banking industry and corporations because, some people. So I read some of the comments. Some people are funny. Some people not as funny. But I appreciate the humor and the criticisms because if I'm looking to represent people, I need to be able to take criticism. And one of the things I didn't point out in the video is that it's just another. So the analogy I made was that if you have a 30-year mortgage at $3,000 a month, it's like, I'm not mathing this correctly. This is not correct math, but just an example.
You're going to pay a lot more for 50 years, and a lot more people are going to lose their homes. A lot more fees are going to generate in the industry. And now, because they've dismantled the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, there are going to be no guardrails on whether they could take advantage of people and fool them into signing up for things they can never pay. So the whole model is to get people stuff they can't afford, get them in debt, and then take their property away.
What did they say in Davos in Switzerland? You'll own nothing and be happy. I feel like that's just another push towards that. But some people are like, oh, but you're saving $500 a month, and I'm like, that is good to save $500 a month, but it is just another Band-Aid solution for a broken bone, and that's why we need to address real fundamental changes and not just these performative actions that.
Yeah, actually, I do credit Trump for trying to come up with a solution. It's just that solution, to me, Harry's saying isn't the American dream to get a home, but it's not a dream to get a home you're going to lose in a few years and pay so much more for it you can't eat because you're taking advantage of by now unregulated financial industries who have science behind them on how to poach the most vulnerable people who don't have money to get more money for them and take their property away through scams.
Well, so in this country, we have more empty homes than we do homeless people. And what's been happening over the past few years are places like BlackRock have been offering, someone puts their house on the market, they find it, and, a young couple goes to offer, the $20,000 above asking price, and then BlackRock swoops in with, $50,000 above asking price. They snatch up all these homes. Then I think they have like a shell company that they then sell a couple of homes to at inflated prices to drive up all of the housing prices. Then property values go up, taxes go up, people can't afford taxes. And so the 50-year mortgage thing, I'm like, you're not addressing the real problem here. And one of the real problems is these private equity firms that are just looking to monopolize the market, to drive up prices, to drive up rent.
Well, now they know that financial transactions are not being regulated and people are being pardoned when they do scams, especially in crypto. Now they're being let out of prison. But my question to you is, on your website, you said that you would then have the government take those properties, I guess, by eminent domain from the private equity companies, which, of course, we all wish they could do. But could that be done in practice? Or would that that's kind of dangerous. You start having the government taking people's property away. We saw that with urban renewal here. How would you actually carry out that goal on your website? I share your utter distaste for private equity. I think they're really causing a lot of harm in the community and they need to be regulated more. I'm just wondering how one would have the government carry out seizing unoccupied homes owned by private equity firms and still follow the Constitution.
No, that is a great question, and every law that's passed is going to have massive amounts of lawyers doing constitutional review, and I'm sure there are people that'll be like, "Oh, that's a slippery slope." But I'm not advocating for the government to seize people's individual personal property.
You're saying empty homes owned by private equity.
Private equity,
which we can all agree we like the theory, but how could you carry that out and still have a lawful government?
That is a great question and something I'm going to have to ponder, because one thing I will say is I'm not just going to spew out some BS to sound good.
Lena Khan's dealt with a lot of this.
And I'm so happy she's on Zoran's team.
Yeah. Okay,
I was very happy about that.
Let's talk about Zoran. So we're talking to Andrew Rice. He's running for Democratic nomination for Congress from the Third Congressional District, which is centered in New Haven. So are you a member of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America?
Yes, I am a paying member.
Do you think they're going to support you in the race?
No, I don't think they are, and part of it is they do want to make sure that anyone that they do support, they have the resources. They just got 1,000. I think they just reached their 1,000th member of CTDSA. But running a congressional campaign is a resource-intensive endeavor, and so I think they want to focus more on smaller avenues of change that they feel they can more confidently achieve versus trying to put their weight behind a very underdog candidate.
So you noticed I really enjoyed the part of your website when you talked about your heroes, those fictional and non-fictional. You mentioned Zohar Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders among your inspirations, along with Jesus Christ, George Carlin, FDR, Al Gore, and Graham Planter. First, I want to ask you: is Planter still on the list, or do you have concerns? He's the main candidate for Senate who had the Nazi tattoos.
So I've read some about that. The thing I'm concerned about is like a lot of this came out after they started recruiting Janet Mills into running, and so is this just another Democratic establishment hit job on a very popular?
Well, the
candidate?
Democrats definitely used it against them. It was true. I mean, he had the tattoos.
So I would need to know more about the Nazi tattoo situation. The one that I looked more into because I'm a gay man. And so, I heard there was like a lot of homophobic slurs and blah, 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 blah. I can understand people's concerns, and I never want to invalidate anyone's feelings. But at the end of the day, I want people to be able to afford a house. I want people to be able to have healthcare. I want people to have good paying jobs, taxing the rich, and no one's going to be perfect. And these purity politics, I think, are damaging the overall message that we should be fighting for, is lifting everyone up in the working class. Did he say some uncouth shit?
It's okay. It's okay. You like to say that.
Okay, cool. This isn't a family. This isn't a family event.
Depends on the family.
That is true. Depends on the family. I believe he apologized. He's also not a Cornhusker. The oyster farmer, ex-military in Maine, in rural Maine. They're going to have a different vibe to them than people in New Haven and Connecticut and New York. And I'm not going to sit here, and the guy seems like he really wants to do what's right for the working class. He seems like he really wants to fight. Do people make mistakes? Yes, I've made mistakes. And I think part of it is giving people the room to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to move forward together. Because at the end of the day, I think he's going to do a much better job at fighting for the working class than Janet Mills, who, she's done some good stuff, but, she's, like 78?
She's running for one term only. Which is problematic when you win a race in a seat that was held by the other party. You're basically saying you can have it up for grabs again the next time.
But Biden also said that he was going to run for one term, and then he changed his mind. So a lot of these politicians get in, and then they change their mind. And so, if Janet Mills got in, is she going to change her mind in 6 years? I mean, Chuck Grassley's like in his 90s or something? So, these people get into power and they don't want to let go of it. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And
I did want to ask you about that. So two of your inspiration figures listed on your website are Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mm-hmm. Now, believe it or not, I don't know Star Wars. When my kids were little, we went and we all fell asleep. And the only character my kids remembered was Princess Leia, their daughters. Tell me about those two characters and why they are your inspiration. I'm sorry, I really was traumatized. I was more a Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers fan.
No judgment. A little judgment. just a tiny bit. I'm like a huge Star Wars
you could judge.
fan.
Yeah.
So I mean, Yoda just has, all of this wisdom. And, one of the things that he said that I really try and live by is, fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I sense much fear in you. And that really hit me as a kid. It's like, yeah, it's okay to be afraid, but to recognize that so that you don't let that fear drive your behaviors, so that you don't let fear consume who you are, so that fear does not lead you to the dark side. And for Obi-Wan, his his commitment to the rebellion, to democracy, to fighting for the little people, and one of his most impactful quotes to me was actually in episode 2 when he's talking to Anakin, and he goes, "What is it? The senators, seem to please the ones who fund their campaigns." And so Star Wars is actually what really got me. So when I was little, Star Wars really got me interested in the whole like political scene. I know a lot of people didn't like the first the prequel trilogy because it dealt with like trade disputes and blah blah, and I found all of that very interesting. And so Star Wars and those stories do form a lot of my politics and morals, and that's kind of what got me interested in politics. I helped on the Joe Courtney campaign in 2006. 2008, I helped campaign for Obama at UConn. I wasn't like in the campaigns. I tried to help Danelle Malloy in 2010, and a lot of that does come from Star Wars and these people fighting impossible battles. Hiding and still holding on to hope that the Republic could be restored. And so America is a republic, and I feel like we are going towards an empire type state, and I still have hope that we can restore the republic.
Boy, what a great ending that would be, this interview. But I did have one more thing.
I'm here for as long as you want me.
More. Okay, so the website you talked about, you're interested in the cultural shift toward democratic populism. And I've been following that argument a lot because I'm someone who's interested in economic populism. And I've noticed that in the history of the United States, including now, what starts out as populism from the left, economic populism, so often ends up as xenophobic, racist, and now anti-gay, LGBT populism of the right. And it's not a one-off. The Populist Party was ahead of its time in the 1800s in enlisting black and white people together at a time where that sounded crazy. And they had a real impact in the politics of the United States. And then it led to the creation of the Klan. The people leading the Populist Party became the Ku Klux Klan when financial interests realized that you could pit people against each other rather than having them united to fight who's ahead of them. And, Vice magazine, there was an article about this the other day, a new book about that. It started out as sort of edgy, left-wing I guess it wasn't Gen Z, maybe a little older, counterculture that was tied in with economic populism. And Gavin MacLeod then left it, who co-founded it, to start the Proud Boys. And MAGA is not conservatism. MAGA is economic populist critique, but not results. And you saw the vote move. Trump now has the economic populist vote. And Zoran Mamdani, for all his economic populist views and an outlook on the world I happen to share, his base was, first of all, people underestimate how much of his base was Jewish, but also it was hipsters from Brooklyn. So where do you go with that as someone who, you're watching this country, you want to promote economic populism, and the people who are winning that argument at the moment have values you completely abhor and that you want to run to stop.
Well, because the Democratic Party abandoned those progressive values. And so as a gay man, I have felt very patronized by Democrats recently, because they always say to people in my community, like, you must vote for the Democrats, because if you don't, Republicans are going to take your rights away. And yesterday Trump just didn't commemorate World AIDS Day, which is a huge
or there have been justices now want to revisit gay marriage.
There's justices that want to revisit gay marriage.
That's a biggie. I mean, Trump got in, and now we have judges who want to revisit gay marriage.
Which to me, like, that sucks. That does not feel good as a gay man to have my identity used against me. But at the same time, what good are having marriage rights if I can't afford to have a wedding? What good are some of these rights if I can't afford, if I were to ever, get a husband, if we can't afford a house, if we can't afford groceries, if if I wanted a family and I can't afford to send them to school? At some point, the Democrats, I feel like, just relied on, back in 2020, Biden, famously said, if you're voting for Trump, you ain't black. What does that even mean?
Well, it's racist.
Well, yes, yes, but it
assumed if you're not for the white guy who says I'm for you, then you don't know your own interests well, and I just need your vote automatically.
Yep, and honestly, that's what I feel like a lot of Democrats have done. Have just relied on identity politics to patronize people into voting for them because lesser of two evils, and they haven't been delivering results that have actually helped working class people. That To me, the biggest divide in this country is between the working class and the people in power. So, like, take example, you have Scott Bessent, the Secretary Treasurer, the Treasury Secretary of the Treasury. You have Peter Thiel, who's involved with Palantir. You have Sam Altman, and all of these, they're all billionaires and they have all this money, and they're still allowing this administration to not commemorate LGBTQIA holidays and events. They're allowing this administration to cut funding that affect people in my community. They're allowing this administration to attack the gay community. So at the end of the day, it just goes to show that once you have a certain amount of money, the identity of anything else just goes away. And one of the reasons why George Carlin is one of my inspirations, because he always said that it's a big club and you ain't in it. None of us are in that club. They don't want us to be in that club. And people like me, Damien, Kyle Gauck, Jillian Gilchrist, we're all trying to fight to see what is in this club that they don't want us to see and that doesn't deliver results to people that need it the most.
Well, the elevator door just opened and you just stepped in, and there's somebody who's a voter in the 3rd district and they're getting off in 3 floors.
The elevators.
Your name is Andrew Rice. You're running for the Democratic nomination for Congress. Before she gets off the elevator, what are you going to tell her?
So, well, first I want to ask her what issues are most important to her. But in the absence of being able to have time to do that, I'm running for office because I want to deliver universal health care to our citizens. I'm running for office because I want students to have their loans refinanced to 1% so that they are not bogged down with student loan interest for the rest of their lives. I want to double the Pell Grants so that everyone has an opportunity to get education and to broaden the requirements to get that federal funding. I want to fight for a 21st century economic bill of rights that ensures everyone is guaranteed a house, food, water, electricity, and ensure that people never have to face the prospect of going homeless in the most rich, powerful nation in the world, and to challenge our leaders who have been in office since I was 3 years old to do better and deliver more results for our people, because there's more money out there that we could be using for our own citizens, and our current leaders are using it overseas to attack other countries, and we need to make sure that we are focusing on the needs of our own people here at home.
Well, you hit the jackpot because of our overburdened electric grid, because of the greedy power companies that should be publicly owned. It actually took an extra bunch of time to get the elevator up to the floor, so you got the whole speech in.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well,
way to go.
Bittersweet, because, that elevator, 21st century, we should have 21st century elevators.
Yeah, next time you're going to have to do it in half the time.
You'll just have to invite me back sometime.
You are invited back.
I would love to. This has been fantastic.
Andrew Rice, it really was such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's been listening. I appreciate it.
And we're going to take it out with, thanks to Harry Drost behind the controls, as always. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.